That should be the last major city in the central region. Shiro muttered, floating in the city. It seems like candidate 49 was dealt with early by Chelsea, so there's not much we need to do in terms of helping their family. Madison nodded her head, since that was one of her main concerns when coming to the center region. Well, it's good that she was able to deal with it alone. I suppose if Balir was chosen as a candidate, it makes sense that Chelsea would have the same power, comparable to a queen candidate. And seeing that she was able to wrestle you and Helion, she would probably rank in the high 20s, maybe even top 10. Shiro shrugged. True. I can still remember seeing her rip the head of a dragon off its shoulders and hit another dragon. With it. Madison shivered, remembering the things she had to go through during the training with Chelsea. That's quite impressive. I wonder what else she could do. Shiro admitted since it was rather hardcore for her to hit a dragon with the head of another dragon. Anyways, since we've taken this city, it's about time we head to the north. Helion should be finishing his first prototype, so let's go get him before we do anything. Shiro smiled, nodding their heads. They were about to leave the city when they sensed a group of powerful mana signals heading their way. Recognizing them to be the candidates that ran away, Shiro wondered what gave them so much confidence to come back. But once she saw them, she immediately lost her smile as her expression was cold. Seeing their lifeless eyes and slow-moving bodies, Shiro understood that it was probably something similar to a parasite that took over them and was forcing them to come back. She didn't care about cowards who ran away, but forcing someone like this against their will was disgusting to her. I'll take care of this, Shiro said as she didn't leave any room for disagreement. Flickering away from the spot, she reappeared in front of the candidates. Summoning her sword, she immediately blocked their first strike before grabbing the throat of the first one. Activating her analysis skill. She found the parasite writhing within them in a single glance. She noticed that the parasites linked themselves within the host's mana, so taking them out meant killing them. But not taking them out would subject the host to the parasite's will, or rather, the controller's will. Narrowing her eyes, she used her mana to forcefully rip out the parasite and discard the body. Grabbing the parasite with her own hand, she didn't even need to command error as red circuits pierced the parasite. Tracking the signal down, she found the controller returning to the Northern Territory with another high-ranking candidate. Now that she found the controller, she had no more use for the parasite. Crushing it in her hands, she looked at the other candidates that were preparing spells to fight against her while two others tried to engage in melee combat. Poor things, she sighed, as she would have probably given them a chance under a contract so that they can live. But now she was essentially forced to kill them. Snapping her fingers once, a small flickering flame appeared as she casually dropped it on the ground. Boom! Erupting into a column of white fire, the candidates were burnt to ashes, leaving only Shiro alone on the now charred ground. Crouching down slightly, she ignored her level-up notifications and dashed towards the direction of the controller. Oh boy, she is livid. Madison whistled, seeing the instant destruction that she sent upon the candidates. Previously, even if she was surrounded like that, she would have played around for a bit before letting them clear out the candidates. But this time, once she had obtained what she wanted, she eliminated them without hesitation. No playfulness, only brutal efficiency. I would say I pity the demon who pissed her off, but not really. I think they deserve it after stripping the candidates of their will. Lyrica sighed as Madison agreed with her. Since Shiro was going to be taking care of a certain controller, the two made their way back to gather the party for a final assault on the northern border, so that Madison could claim her spot as the proper queen. While the competition would begin once the new age starts, if there are no other candidates, she would become the automatic winner. While this was happening, Asphil and Priscilla, the 9th-ranked candidate, were making their way back to the castle. As they were walking, Priscilla suddenly stopped mid-step as her face paled. Her mouth quivered before coughing up some blood. What the hell? Asphil was shocked since to her, Priscilla suddenly started to cough up blood all of the sudden. She's coming. Damn. They didn't delay her at all. She's coming here faster than before. Priscilla shouted out in fear as she immediately activated all of her berserk skills and anything that boosted up her stats, since she could sense the source of the horrific killing intent coming closer. Seeing that Priscera was going all out, Asphil was forced back from the pressure as sweat rolled down the side of her head. She had never seen Priscera acting so panicked before, so seeing her act like this was quite shocking. Before she could even say anything, she realized that Shiro was already in front of them as she held Priscera by the throat and lifted her up in the air. "You're the one who implanted the parasites, aren't you?" Shiro asked with a cold voice. Overcome with fear, Priscera wasn't able to respond at all while Asphil's entire body tensed up. Her senses told her that a single move would mean death, and the best she could do right now was stay still and hope that she leaves without killing her. "We wanted to fight this thing." "Impossible," she thought to herself with ridicule. Seeing Shiro through a projection and meeting her in person was two entirely different things, as being in her presence caused an unimaginable amount of fear from the killing intent that was being radiated from her body right now. She understood right now that even if Gnostic reached Tier 6, he was still going to die by her hand with ease. Hearing no response from the woman, Shiro only narrowed her eyes as she released a few nanobots from her hand. Suddenly, Priscera's skin started to peel back as the nanobots started cutting her up, layer by layer. She wanted to cry out in pain, but Shiro's hand only gripped her throat harder, thrashing around in her grip. Priscera tried to break out by launching some spells at her, but the magic circles were broken the moment they appeared. Kicking her legs, she wanted to push Shiro back, but it was as though nothing was hitting her. Shiro stayed still like a statue, while Priscera was being flayed by the nanobots. Seeing her barely alive with her life fire, she made sure that her soul was secured to her body so that she could feel every last drop of pain. Soon, only a skeleton and a pile of shredded flesh remained as Shiro reached out for her soul. Stomping down, a portal appeared as she grabbed the lantern. "What is it this time? Another soul for me to torture?" "It's getting somewhat boring, you know. They just keep screaming and it becomes repetitive. How do people even do this for a living without getting bored?" The ancient terror yawned as Shiro narrowed her eyes. "Well, it's just something to keep you occupied. Regardless, I want you to make sure she suffers as much as possible. If you get bored, destroy her soul," Shiro ordered. Fine, I'll do it. Since you got the whole tiny bot thing, mind giving me a TV or something in here? I've seen you watch it a few times, and it looks pretty fun." "Depends." Without saying anything else, Shiro imprisoned the soul into the lantern before dismissing the lantern once more. Looking at the candidate next to her, Shiro recognized her to be rank 10 from the information she had gathered. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro left the area without saying anything. After a few moments, Asphil collapsed on the ground as her back was filled with sweat. Looking at her hand, she could see that it was still shaking from fear as she took a deep breath and calmed herself. "I'm not fighting that thing," she thought to herself as she decided to go back to the center so that she could try to come to an agreement with Shiro. It was wishful thinking, but she had to give it a try. Making her way back, Shiro stretched her body. "Why did you leave that other candidate?" Nimue asked curiously, since she thought that Shiro would have finished the job. "There wasn't any need for me to kill her. If anything, it's more beneficial. To leave her alone so that when we see her again, the party can get some XP from her death. If not for the fact that the controller annoyed me, I wouldn't have made a move personally." Shiro shrugged. "True. She really pissed you off, huh? You actually chased her from the central region all the way to the north to kill her." Nimue chuckled. "And anyways, the girls should have made it back to the party. Hopefully my little act didn't scare them too much. If they decide to surrender, it would be pretty annoying since they're walking bags of EXP. Shiro replied as Nimue laughed. "Yikes, how cruel. Despite all of their efforts in getting stronger, you casually refer to them as walking bags of EXP. The fact that you're not kidding is rather disturbing. I remember when you used to do everything as low-key as you could." Nimue shrugged. Of course, with my personality, do you honestly think I'd keep things hidden for long? I'm strong enough to not hold back anymore." Shiro replied, since she knew that the main reason for hiding her strength before was because of her monster status, along with the fact that she was too weak. If they discovered the power of her nanobots, while she was weak, she would have been taken away due to her powers. perhaps even experimented on once more. However, since she was able to survive the initial growing stage, she could now live without too much worry. Of course, with the new age coming up, she had to be more careful, but for now, she could live freely without worry. If things stayed like this, she wouldn't mind it at all. Making her way back to one of the cities that they had conquered, Shiro, was just in time to see Helion giving the party a few new pieces of equipment. "Oh, Shiro's back. How was your little excursion in looking for the controller?" Madison asked, with a happy smile. "As usual. They're dead, I'm not. Though I must say you're looking pretty happy. Did something good happen?" Shiro asked with a smile. "Fufu." "You noticed." Madison grinned while showing off her armor. "Helion made me a growth-type armor like yours, and it has high magic resistance. It is also black-ranked." Madison smiled with joy as Shiro nodded her head. My, this treatment is rather biased, isn't it? We got armor that only lasts for 5 levels, but Maddie is actually getting a growth-type equipment. Is there something you need to tell us, Helion?" Lyrica glanced towards Helion with a smug smile. "Carve! I didn't have enough resources to make more sets," Helion said as the party knew it was an excuse. "What happened to the 'I'm working on something for you' that you said to Maddie a while ago?" Sylvia giggled while sitting on the sofa next to Chen Yu. Hearing this, Helion couldn't help but blush. "Fufu, leave the poor guy alone. I'm sure you and Madison have plenty to talk about when you're alone." Erim grinned as Madison looked down with an embarrassed blush. All right, enough teasing. We'll finish everything tomorrow, and Maddie will be the only candidate left. That way, she will automatically become the queen once the new age starts." Shiro smiled as the party calmed down. All of the teasing stopped, and they had serious expressions on their face. "Is there anything else we need to prepare?" Helion asked, as he had already given everyone their new armor with the magic resistance. In a fight, they should be able to hold their own quite nicely. "Not much other than make sure you're ready. I won't interfere much unless absolutely needed, so I'll give you all the information I have collected. Ranks 1, 2, and 3 are still pretty much mysteries, since we only know that rank 1 can turn anything he touches to ash. I'll give you each a tablet now, and it'll give you information on candidates ranked 4 to 10. 9 has been eliminated, so you don't need to worry about her," Shiro said while creating the tablets. Rank 10, Asphil, in the rumors, it stated that she does not use weapons at all, nor does she cast any magic. She relies on her bare hands, and they're sharp like swords. Her physical capabilities are on the higher end, and her defenses are rather peculiar. It seems like she works with space, since she can stop attacks near her by collapsing the area where the attack is, and dismiss it entirely. The only downside to this is that her defenses have a cooldown of sorts, depending on what kind of attack she cancels. Rank 8 failure. She is a weapon master that is specialized in using hidden weapons such as wires, daggers, and so on, but do not underestimate this, since she can ignore most of the armor that her enemies wear. Her wires can cut through armor like butter, and her daggers can be thrown at incredible speeds. Her magic is limited, but it's mostly used to buff herself with a few minor spells that can help her attack from range. Rank 7, Quinrad, a king candidate, and a berserker. However, compared to normal berserkers, he is more magic-orientated, as he is able to use magic to fight while charging forth like a force of nature. Don't underestimate him. Continuing to talk about the candidates while everyone looked at their information, Shiro gave them a brief lesson on how they should prepare against a few of the spells. Of course, she didn't tell them exactly how to fight them, since doing so would be babying them too much. Once she was done with her small lecture, the party double-checked everything to make sure that they were ready. Making a car, Shiro started to drive towards the northern border. While this was happening, the remaining candidates were sitting in Gnostic's castle with a serious expression. From the information that they had gathered, Prisera had been killed and Asphil deserted. With 2 candidates gone, it was just 8 of them against the entire party. Their initial plan was to isolate them and deal with them one by one, but now that their numbers were on the lower side, it was going to be hard unless they used some artifacts meant for Shiro on the party instead. "What should we do?" The rank 5 candidate, Saresha, asked with a frown. "Nothing. There isn't anything we can do right now other than try to get as many artifacts as we can. There isn't a way for us to get strong in a short period of time, so we can only hope that Gnostic reaches Tier 6 quickly. He's already been in there for a while now, so it should end soon. Rank 3, Linri sighed as they were running out of options. If Procera wasn't too hasty in provoking her, then things would have been fine. Even if the cowards made their way here, they could still be used as distractions without converting them. I don't know what Asfil saw that caused her to desert. But honestly, at this point, we might have no choice but to surrender if we want to live or fight it out. And the odds of the second option succeeding is much lower. Rank 8, Felia replied while scratching her head. Hearing this, the candidates stayed silent before Rank 3 coughed lightly. Don't think about it for now. Just focus on gathering the artifacts. If we play our cards carefully, we won't have to fight the white-haired one if we manage to procure the black-ranked artifact. Once we do, we can seal her away and not fight her, but Gnostic will be sacrificed. But considering that it's a one-for-one trade-off, it's not that bad. Wislia, the Rank 3 Queen candidate, reminded as the other candidates seemed to calm own for. A moment. I've managed to track its location, but obtaining it is proving to be quite difficult, Saresha replied as Wislia nodded her head. Just try to get it as soon as possible. Since they've conquered the central region, I can say that they're probably making their way here now. Wislia narrowed her eyes as Saresha nodded before leaving the hall so that she could personally try to obtain that artifact. Instructing the other candidates on a few tasks that they should do, Wislia sat down and glanced out the window. Even though she said all of that, the chances of success was less than 10%. Most of them will probably die by tomorrow. Closing her eyes, she could only sigh at her fate. While on their way towards the northern border, Shiro stopped the car at a rather curious sight. A lone candidate stood in their path, but it seemed like she had no intent to fight at all. Raising her eyebrows, Shiro stopped the car as she recognized who she was. Are we fighting? Lyrica asked, seeing the candidate. Not yet, we'll see what happens since she is rank 10 Asfil who was with rank 9 when I killed her. She didn't do anything, which I think was probably because she was scared, but it seems like she's been waiting here for us, Shiro replied as she stepped out of the car. Seeing Shiro, Asfil's body shook in fear, but she took a deep breath and calmed herself as best as she could. Are you here for a fight, or are you here for something else? From what I can see, you haven't returned to where you were planning to go. Shiro smiled. I didn't go back since I understand there is no chance of victory. Asfil shook her head. She was a little surprised at Shiro's attitude since last time they met. She was like a malevolent beast with oppressive killing intent, but now she seems to be rather casual. However, she knew better than to annoy her. Oh. So you're deserting your allies? Shiro asked with a raised eyebrow. In a way, yes. Though we aren't exactly allies, since all of us wanted to be the final victor. But with Gnostic's power, it's hard to imagine that we'll succeed, should you have not come. But now that you've arrived, most of the candidates are helping Gnostic in hopes that he will die alongside you, so that they're able to seize the chance to become the final victor. Asfil replied, as Shiro nodded her head. From the way she's describing it, their alliance of sorts seemed to have quite a shaky foundation, since the only reason they teamed up was because of her. And you're here because you don't think your alliance will win? Shiro asked, as Asfil nodded her head. Since I am on the lower rankings, it's rather clear that I don't have a good chance at seizing the throne at the end. Even if I go back, I'm probably going to be used as cannon fodder. Plus, if any of the king candidates win, we'll lose our freedom, and that is the opposite of what I want. Asfil replied as she bit her lip. Kneeling in front of Shiro, she pressed her head against the ground and set her pride aside. As one of the highest-ranking demons in this continent, she had never bowed her head towards anyone except for Shiro, as shameful as it is, I wish to work under you so that I may have a chance to live. It's better to do what I can to assist you, rather than waste my life as a means for delay. If a king ascends, I lose my freedom, and even if a king does not ascend, I would have been used as bait or to delay. So my only path to survival is through you, Asfil said, as Shiro raised her eyebrow and glanced at Madison. Well, I'm not the demon candidate, so you can ask Maddie instead. Shiro smiled, as Asfil was a little confused, but she understood that Madison was probably the demon candidate in their group. While she was a little against serving someone weaker than her, she had no choice, since it's what Shiro had said. Sensing her discontent, Shiro could only shake her head, since for people like her, the values of the demons were deeply ingrained into her. So unless she was defeated by Madison, she wouldn't serve her wholeheartedly. Walking up, Madison looked at Asphil, before looking towards Shiro. We need more demons to look after the places we conquered, so having her on our side would be quite helpful. But I'm sure for someone of your status, you would be pretty upset with serving the rank 72nd candidate when you're rank 9. Why don't we have a little spa? If I win, you'll serve me properly, and if I lose, you don't need to serve me and still live. Madison smiled towards Asphil. Are you sure? You know if she stays around without serving you, there's a chance for her to fight you for the throne when the time comes. Shiro narrowed her eyes. It's fine, trust in me. Madison smiled as Shiro nodded her head. She understood that Madison was her own person, and her decisions are hers to make. Hearing that she was going to serve the 72nd candidate, Asphil couldn't help but feel against the decision in her mind, but was overjoyed when Madison proposed the fight. However, she quickly calmed herself down, as there could be a catch. Don't be so on guard. Madison's being serious. If you win, we'll let you live without the need of serving after her, since it's what she has decided. Shiro shrugged, as Asphil looked up at Shiro with surprise. Rangobesh, don't be so surprised. We're not heartless people. Should I make an arena for you, or will you be fighting normally? Shiro asked, while gesturing at the large open space that connected the central region to the northern border. It's up to Asphil, since I don't mind. Madison chuckled. She decided to do things the hard way so that they can get themselves a proper ally rather than just someone that had been forced to do this. She also understands that demons place strength above all, so defeating her would allow her to get a proper ally. Are you sure you want to fight? I am 75 levels above you, so it might be unfair, Asphil asked, surprising the party since she was actually worried about fairness. We'll have Sylvia give Madison a few buffs so that she can close this gap between the two of you. How's that? Shiro proposed with a smile, as Asphil had given her a rather decent impression, since many would be overjoyed at fighting a person lower level than them when their freedom was on the line. That is fine with me. Asphil nodded her head. In the end, they decided to go with an open arena so that they could fully demonstrate their prowess. Stretching her body, Madison looked at Asphil, who was taking deep breaths to focus her mind. In Yao, the distance, the party was watching while Shiro acted as the referee. With Shiro's promise of not being biased, she knew that this was going to be a fair fight. Ready? Shiro called out as both Madison and Asphil nodded their heads. Slamming her staff down, Sylvia applied a few buffs to Madison so that her stats would increase. This way, Asphil wouldn't be able to brute force her way through. Summoning an axe, Madison took the initiative and dashed towards Asphil. Narrowing her eyes, Asphil also charged towards Madison as she activated one of her skills and increased her speed. Appearing in front of Madison in an instant, she swiped up with her hand. Surprisingly, Madison was able to dodge to the side just in time as the space rippled at the stop she was previously at, without being able to hit their target. Shocked at the fact that Madison was actually able to dodge the first strike, Asphil tried to step in back to make some distance, but Madison was faster. Swinging the pommel of her axe up, she slammed it against Asphil's chest. Crack! Crack! Gritting her teeth, Asphil could feel her ribs cracking at that single hit, which shocked her, as her power was far higher than what she had expected. However, seeing a red glow on her body, she realized that Madison had used a berserk skill. At the start, is she crazy? Asphil thought to herself, since berserk skills only last a short while, and after that moment, they would be severely weakened. All she needed to do was avoid Madison for a while, and victory would be in her grasp. While she understood what she needed to do, it was rather hard with Madison's agility. She was able to heal her broken ribs with one of her self-recovery skills, but there was a limit to what she could do. Slamming her hands down on the ground, a shockwave exploded out as Madison dismissed her axe and summoned a shield. Bang! Clashing against the shockwave, Madison was pushed back by a few steps. But she held on strong. Stomping down heavily, she charged forward like an unstoppable force of nature. Widening her eyes, Asphil wanted to dodge to the side, but Madison's shield seemed to be magnetized to her body. Crack! Feeling the weight of the heavy shield slam into her, Asphil gritted her teeth and tried to absorb the strike with one of her spells. The space in front of her started rippling as Madison felt danger. If she was to continue, she would definitely be harmed. Letting go of her shield, she used it as a cover before stomping down. Bang! A spider web of cracks exploded out as Asphil immediately lost her footing. Jumping up in the air, Asphil wanted to get away when Madison grabbed her ankles and slammed her back down. Gritting her teeth, Asphil understood that she also needed to activate her berserk skills if she wanted to win. Activating her berserk skill without hesitation, the space around Asphil started to ripple, as Madison was blown back in a single moment. Flipping in the air, Madison wanted to land properly when Asphil teleported behind her, quickly summoning her. Shield! Madison turned around and blocked her strike. Krrr! The sound of metal tearing could be heard as the shield started to shred to pieces. Quickly letting go, Madison flew back, but Asphil wasn't giving her any room to breathe, twisting her body. She kicked Madison in the stomach. Bang! Sending her body flying, Asphil continued to chase as she grabbed towards Madison's shoulder. Space rippled around her hand as Madison knew that letting the attack land would be bad news. Summoning her avatar, she grabbed Asphil and tried to throw her away when the avatar's arm was shredded to pieces. Like a raging beast, Asphil continued to claw towards Madison as her aura flared wildly. Seeing this, the party was a little concerned but didn't say anything since they trusted Madison. They knew that if she played her cards right, she'll be able to win. Gritting her teeth, Madison activated a second berserk skill, and her stats jumped up once more. Grabbing Asphil's wrist, Madison slammed her head against Asphil's head and kneed her in the stomach. Twisting her body, she threw Asphil towards the ground and wanted to follow up the combo, but Asphil only teleported behind her. Summoning another shield, she tried to block but was a little too slow. Cough! Feeling the pain on her back, Madison coughed up a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Hellion almost jumped into the fray, but was held back by the party who were watching with serious expressions. Gritting his teeth, Hellion sat back down and watched. What was happening? Trust in her more. Shiro smiled as Hellion nodded his head and sighed. She should be turning the tables in 10 seconds. Shiro narrowed her eyes as she could already sense Asphil's aura fluctuating, which means her berserk skill is almost up, flickering next to Madison. Asphil unleashed a barrage of strikes against Madison, who could only use her shield to block. Seeing that she wasn't doing anything substantial to her, Asphil started to become worried since her berserk skill was about to run out, but Madison was still holding on strong. Even though one of her berserk skills had ended, she didn't seem weakened at all, which confused her. But the only thing she could do was try to end things quickly. Gathering her mana into her right hand, she slashed towards Madison. Suddenly, Madison grinned as a Tier 5 magic circle appeared on her shield just before the strike landed on her. Sorry about this. Reflection. Madison narrowed her eyes as the attack was instantly reflected back at Asphil. Puff! Deep slash marks appeared on Asphil's body as blood sprayed out. Not letting this moment go, Madison dismissed her shield and unleashed a barrage of strikes against Asphil. Collapsing on the ground, Asphil wasn't able to move anymore as she was, losing a lot of blood. Even with her regeneration, she would be in this state for a while. Ranob. Why are you not weakened even though you used 2 berserk skills? Asphil asked as her voice seemed a little weak. She was now suffering from the backlash of her skill as she could feel pain from every part of her body. It's a passive of mine. I don't feel any backlashes from any berserk skills that I use. The fight was a little brutish since I'm the tank for my team. While I can convert my stats to attack, most of my skills are about reducing damage and reflecting it. Honestly, if you didn't unleash one large strike, I might have been in danger. Madison smiled as Asphil couldn't help but laugh. Your passive is such a powerful skill. Once demons see you use your berserk skill, They'll think they can win if they wait it out, but you'll just activate another one. The best way to fight against you is to end you quickly, but since you have damage reduction and reflection, ending you quickly wouldn't be possible. Asphil sighed. It does sound like it, but out of everyone in the party, I'm probably on the weaker side since I focus on defense. Madison grinned as the party made their way over. Tapping her staff down, Sylvia healed both Asphil and Madison in the end. With her wounds healed, Asphil kneeled on one knee in front of Madison. As I have lost the fight fair and square despite being a higher level, rank 10 candidate Asphil will serve rank 72 Madison without complaints. I shall complete any tasks you hand to me wholeheartedly and address you as my mistress from now on. I will no longer be the 10th ranked candidate, but rather your servant. Asphil closed her eyes as a binding contract was invoked, which surprised Shiro since it demonstrated her sincerity. With the binding contract, if Asphil betrayed Madison, she would suffer quite a harsh backlash. Shocked at this, Madison was about to reject it, since she never wanted to bind her, but seeing her resolute face, she knew that Asphil was 100% serious. Scratching her head, she looked at Shiro awkwardly. How do I finish this contract? Hearing this, Asphil almost fell over with embarrassment since it was awkward to keep kneeling with the other party, not knowing what to do. Pfft! Just channel your mana and drop some blood before announcing your name, rank, and say I accept the contract. Shiro laughed as Madison nodded her head awkwardly. Ahem. Madison rank 72 Demon Queen candidate, I accept the contract. Madison said, as she cut her finger slightly and squeezed out a single droplet of blood. As the blood came into contact with the magic circle, an illusionary chain could be seen attaching themselves onto Asphil's neck and wrists before fading away. I am yours to command now, mistress. The entire Valtores family will serve you with me as their leader and accomplish any task you give us. Asphil said as Madison scratched her head. We'll talk about that later, I guess. For now, we're going to continue to the northern border where Gnostic and the others are. Are you able to tell us information about them? We already have some information, so is there anything that you can add? Madison asked, as she handed Asphil the tablet with the information on all the top 10 candidates. Reading it through, she was surprised at how much information was gathered considering the fact that they knew nothing about the party. Most of the information that you have collected are indeed correct, but some of the rumors are exaggerated. For example, Felia can't cut through all armors like butter. She has a skill that lets her see weak points, and once she strikes it, the armor is reduced by 70%. If she misses, the armor is not reduced at all. Asphil said, as Shiro corrected the information. While they were driving towards the castle, Asphil helped them get a better idea about the candidates, as Madison was quite grateful since they weren't as threatening as they initially seemed, now that they know some of their weaknesses. For ranks 2 and 3, we never really fought, so we don't know much about them. Like when I first met Miss Shiro, it was an instinctive feeling that told us we won't be able to win against them. Asphil shook her head. So the top 3 are still a mystery then? Shiro raised her eyebrow. But if you are able to defeat Gnostic, defeating ranks 2 and 3 will be easy for you. However, while you are strong, I need to warn you about artifacts. With the top 10 working together in order to defeat you, they have been gathering powerful artifacts that are essentially one-time use items in order to defeat you. One that you need to be careful of is a black-ranked artifact that is specialized in sealing. The cost is the life of a single being and uses their soul as the prison. This would stop them from reincarnating, and the stronger the soul, the stronger the prison. They haven't obtained the artifact just yet, but I do believe their plan is to kill Gnostic in order to imprison you. Asphil warned, as Shiro had a serious expression on her face. Even for someone like her, a black-ranked artifact was something rather dangerous, especially if it is specialized for sealing. She didn't have anything that could help her in terms of anti-seal, so the best way to go about things would probably be to ascend into demigod form. Thankfully, she has knowledge on souls, so depending on the type of seal, she could repurpose it to benefit her instead. With new information on the rankers, along with the artifacts that they're trying to get, Shiro started to formulate a few plans in her mind, since they couldn't run into things blindly. Now that they had the advantage of information, not doing Anything with it would be rather stupid. Right now, they have an artifact that allows them to isolate us from one another, and it can be controlled at will. According to Asphil, they were planning to split us and face us in a one-on-one situation. If we can control who we face, we'll be able to set up the most advantageous matchups, but since we can't do that, we can only assume that we'll be facing the hardest matchups. Shiro thought with a frown while driving. Plus, with the information that they have additional artifacts that can be used for battle, there could be a chance that they'll use it on the party the moment it seems like they're about to lose. Should that happen, there's a high likelihood that one of the party members could die. And looking at their expressions, they understand that too. Right now, Sylvia's resurrection, while powerful, has a drawback of needing to revive them rather. Soon, so if the fight drags on, the chances of being revived aren't high. Nimue added, as she too had a serious expression. Perhaps if we join the battle, we can turn things in our favor even if they have artifacts. Estrella suggested, as Izuel agreed with her. Both of them were quite powerful as Izuel commands the nature element and Estrella is a master of utilizing space. While they may not be queens or candidates, they could keep up with relative ease. Are you sure? Neither of you have fought a battle in a while, so I'm not sure if you can still keep up. Shiro asked with worry. After her upgrade, she was able to fight her battles herself, so Estrella's help wasn't necessary. Therefore, she had been spending her time meditating in the mana realm, waiting for the moment that she was needed. Unfortunately, while she was in the mana realm, she rarely spoke unless needed, since she still believes that she should be punished. However, Shiro had long forgiven her, and would like to treat her the same as Izuel and Nimue. In fact, it would be better if Estrella could be more open, but it seems like their relationship would be stuck at a formal stage and never anything more. Thinking about this, Shiro couldn't help but sigh. Don't worry, Your Highness, I am confident in my combat prowess. Even if I haven't fought in a long time, I won't lose to some candidates that haven't become queens yet. Estrella bowed as Shiro massaged her eyes. True. Speaking of which, since you've been stuck at level 500 for a while, have you tried? Reaching tier 6 yet? Shiro asked curiously, as Estrella nodded her head. During the time that I have been meditating, I have been following what you told to Nantian and tried to improve my connection to my attunement. However, it has proven to be rather difficult to advance to the next level. Hopefully, I'll be able to receive enlightenment soon and become a tier 6, so that I can better assist you in your endeavors. Estrella said, as Shiro nodded her head. Thank you, but we need to talk about something first. You know, I have long forgiven you, right? You don't need to take things so seriously. Shiro smiled softly as Estrella stayed silent. I'm sorry. The sin of harming your life is too big for me to just set aside. Until I can repay my sin, I cannot allow myself to forget and act as though it had never happened. Estrella looked down and bit her lip. Seeing that Estrella was adamant on her choice, Shiro sighed. She was both disappointed and understanding, in a way. However, Nimue only shrugged her shoulders before walking up to Estrella. Massaging her wrist for a moment, she twisted her body and slapped Estrella across the face. Blinking her eyes in surprise, Estrella looked at Nimue in shock. Can't you see that you're making it hard on Shiro? I know that you can't forgive yourself for what you have done, but can't you see that Shiro had already moved past it? With the things coming in the future, there's no point dwelling in the past. Nimue crossed her hand, as Estrella didn't know what to say. All that you're doing now is finding an excuse so that you can give yourself peace in a way. You're blocked by the thought that you should have died to pay for your sin. However, rather than taking the easy way out, why don't you try the hard way? Drop that thought process, allow yourself to be forgiven and work towards a better future. There's not much else I can do other than maintain Shiro's body since I'm a water spirit. Sure, I can go out, bring out water from the air, control people, since they're made of water, but compared to space, it's much weaker. Think about it. The only reason I could leave occasionally and go out to help Shiro is because I'm actively seeking out chances to help, rather than when things become dire. It is also during those moments that we become closer, since I talk to her often. Izuel can't do that, since she's busy looking after Ati in here, since we know that Shiro is too busy. But she still talks to Shiro every so often. So why don't you stop acting like a child and actually move on? Because it's better to see you, being more lively compared to sulking in the corner. Nimue huffed, as Shiro couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Hearing this, Estrella gritted her teeth. I'm not sulking in the corner. Do you know how it feels to have almost single-handedly end your own race? I almost killed Shiro, damn it. I sent a powerful monster at her, weakened or not, and if not for all the healers that Nantian had brought along with the efforts of the party, she would have died then and there. She was forced to use so many berserk skills at once, and destroyed her body. You of all people should know, since you had to try and repair it too. After seeing the last queen die, I vowed to find a proper queen, but I almost ended her myself, Estrella replied as she was frustrated by her own actions. So you can't forgive yourself in the end, because you almost killed Shiro? You do realize that while you almost killed her once, this idiot here almost killed herself multiple times. If anything, she's the record holder here. Nimue pointed at Shiro. Oi, I'm still here. Shiro forced a smile. I know hence why I said, regardless, there are so many things that you can be doing, but you decide to be a child and actually sulk about it. Are you sure you used to be on the council? Because you're not acting like it. Nimue smirked as Estrella was about to lash out when Ati tugged at her dress. Looking pat, Ati tiptoed and patted her head. Estrella. Don't be sad. Mommy doesn't like seeing friends sad. Ati said as Shiro smiled. You can focus on your next step and talk to the party. I'll talk to Estrella. I'll make sure she forgives herself. Plus, I got Ati helping me. Nimue whispered over as Shiro nodded her head gratefully. Ranno BT, thanks. I owe. You won. But you already owe me quite a bit, never mind one. The times that I've had to maintain your body is more than enough, and that wasn't counting the times that you've made me want to flip a table or flip this entire mana realm into oblivion. Nimue rolled her eyes as Shiro chuckled softly. Now go. I'll deal with this now. Nodding her head, she left the mana realm and glanced back at the party, using the rear-view mirror. Nimue, Izuel, and Estrella will be helping us in the fight. Including Asphil, we'll have a total of 13 fighters, while they only 8 fighter since rank 9 is dead, and Asphil is on our side now. Even if they use the artifact to separate us, we can expect that some of us will be fighting 2-on-1. Hell, there's even a chance for 3-on-1 if they're confident. We can't plan around this, so just memorize what I've said and make sure you keep your guard up. If you play your cards correctly, I know that each of you can defeat them with ease. Shiro smiled as the party nodded their heads. As for Asphil, she was shocked to hear that 3 others are joining the fight, and couldn't help but feel relieved that she had joined this side and was actually accepted. Thinking back, she couldn't help but pity the other rankers that will face the party. Is Gnostic not done yet? Suresha asked as she tapped the table impatiently. They already saw the party coming with one of their scouts, which was killed instantly, and understood that a fight will break out soon. Without Gnostic around, there was no point fighting them since the chances of victory are null. Be patient, can't you sense his growing power? Just wait a little longer. Weaslea shook her head. All we've been doing is sensing his growth. Can't you tell us something else? Quinrad asked with a glare. There is nothing else for me to say other than reaching Tier 6 is not easy. All we can do is wait for Gnostic to reach that tier and hope that he can occupy the white-haired girl long enough for us to seal her away. Weaslea shook her head as she could understand why they would be anxious. Their lives are on the line after all. Asphil has joined their side too. I suppose the chances of having our plans leaked is rather high. Felia sighed. Indeed. She could be expecting the use of the artifacts to seal her away, along with the fact that we're going to isolate them. For them to continue, it could be that they're not afraid of single combat. Weaslea looked down and sighed. However, just as she sighed, they felt an explosion of mana which dwarfed their power easily. Widening their eyes, they quickly looked over and saw Gnostic walking over with a neutral expression while glancing at his fist. Tier 6 is indeed different, but I don't think this is enough. Gnostic said as he looked up at the candidates. I may have reached Tier 6, but the chances of me coming out victorious are less than 10%. Have you retrieved the sealing artifact yet? He asked as they glanced towards Suresha, since she was the one responsible for getting the sealing artifact. We're just 1 or 2 steps away from getting it. If we can delay them a bit longer, we'll be able to claim the artifact. Suresha replied, as Gnostic furrowed her brows. That's too long. I'll go get it myself, Gnostic said as he made his way out of the castle. Is there anything else we should do during this? Wislia asked. Thinking about it for a moment, Gnostic glanced back at the candidates. Get everyone to follow me. There's no point in waiting in one spot. We'll move towards the artifact location and fight them where it is beneficial for us. If I remember correctly, there should be rather large forest with the demonic trees near the artifact. We'll use that to our advantage, Gnostic said as Wislia furrowed her brows. But we don't know how to use the demonic trees. They'll attack us as well, Wislia replied, as Gnostic didn't say anything and glanced towards Prisaya, the second-ranked candidate. Why are you looking at me? Prisaya smiled. You have a way to control them, don't you? Gnostic asked, as his eyes seemed to look past her facade. While it may sound like a question, Prisaya knew that it was basically announcing that she could, and not asking for her confirmation. Fine, I can. My family has found a way to use them, not too long ago. She clicked her tongue, as Gnostic nodded his head. We'll have Prisaya control the trees so that they don't turn on us. Just be warned, though, our control over the trees aren't amazing just yet. If you hit them, they will disregard our instructions, so you have to be careful. You can still use them as jumping platforms or something like that, but if you damage them, you will be classed as an enemy for them, Prisaya warned. Ranoves. I see. That's fine. We'll just have to create our own platforms, which shouldn't be too hard now, should it? Gnostic asked, as the candidates nodded his head. Leaving the castle, he looked back. Is there something you missed? Wislia asked, as Gnostic stayed silent for a moment before opening his mouth. We'll make this place a trap to delay them further. Slamming his hand down, a giant Tier 6 magic circle expanded out as the castle disintegrated, in an instant before being reconstructed by a strange black mass. Activating a few other Tier 6 magic circles, he nodded his head and left without looking back. Sensing a sudden spike in power in the far distance, Shiro understood that Gnostic had probably reached Tier 6, and that none of the party members here can face him. Before she could say anything, Arim frowned and looked towards the party. Gnostic reached Tier 6. I just felt a spike in mana similar to when Shiro uses her Tier 6 spells. She informed the party, which surprised Shiro since this meant that her senses for mana was reaching her level. That's quite impressive, isn't it? Nimue smiled since Shiro's senses and control over mana was simply monstrous. For Arim to be able to keep up was crazy in her own way. Indeed. Perhaps in the future, we'll have Lyrica and the others being able to reach 100% control of their body. Shiro smiled, since being able to control 100% of their body is what allows her to react quickly, both in body and mind when it comes to danger. 100% control is a little harder, especially since you were able to achieve it because of how your brain works. It'll be hard for the others. Nimue furrowed her brows. True. Honestly, if they can even reach 90%, it'll be impressive since that was my limit in the first life. Also, how is it going with talking to Estrella? Has she been able to forgive herself yet? Shiro asked, as she couldn't see Estrella. Oh, it's going fine. She just needs a few moments to herself so that she can sort things out. But don't worry, next time you see her she should be more casual. Nimue grinned as Shiro nodded her head. Focusing her mind back on reality, she created a few drones to scout on ahead since Gnostic had reached Tier 6, approaching the castle with the drones. She couldn't help but notice that the entire thing seemed to be made from mana. While the signal was weak, she could still sense it. But before she could get a closer look, all of the drones started to break apart and turn to ash. Raising her eyebrows in surprise, Shiro didn't expect Gnostic to be able to destroy her drones without being here since the castle was empty. Narrowing her eyes, she wondered where he had gone. Sending out another wave of drones, Shiro had reinforced them so that they could stand up against the corrosion. Scanning the area thoroughly, she noticed the fact that the castle has been turned into a giant death trap that would kill them. There's a few fake signals inside, but Shiro knew better than to think they're Huma, since the signals were one-dimensional. They stayed consistent and didn't fluctuate. Real mana signals would change slightly depending on the little shifts in mood, so it was much harder to make a fake signal that one would think. Of course, she had to applaud his efforts in trying to make the trap look real. Sending out some tracking drones, Shiro was able to find their track. We're turning left. The castle is empty. It seems like they've evacuated the castle and turned it into a death trap. Hearing this, Asphil furrowed her brows. If we go left, that is where they will find the sealing artifact. I don't think they have obtained it just yet, hence why they're making their way towards the artifact. Asphil said as Shiro nodded her head. Well, regardless of whether or not they get the artifact or not, using something that deals with souls against me is rather stupid. Shiro shrugged as Asphil was confused. How come? Because I'm basically half a reaper. My mother's half of the lineage deals with souls. Plus, I'm the spirit queen and my spirit nature is soul-related too. Shiro grinned. While the party didn't know about her lineage, they knew about her power over souls, so they weren't too shocked. As for Asphil, she was different since it was the first time she found this out about Shiro. The fact that she was actually a queen was plenty shocking. You're a queen? She asked, as Shiro nodded her head. Well, I say I'm a queen, but I'm actually a rank above that. I'm an empress. Shiro laughed, as Asphil was speechless. She knew that there are candidates and queens, but the fact that there was a rank above queen was news to her, though it does explain her monstrous strength. Thinking about this, Asphil sighed inwardly. There is no chance for a candidate to kill an empress. Plus, they were also going to be using a soul-related artifact against someone who uses souls. No matter what they chose, they were being countered by Shiro. As they were tracking the candidates, Shiro forcefully activated the castle death trap, using one of her drones with a proper fake signal that felt real, just for fun. Plus, if she left it around, there was the chance that someone could be harmed. Sending. Her drones to track the candidates, Shiro increased the speed of her car. Halfway through her drive, she received a request for a call from her earpiece. Sup, this is Shiro speaking. Shiro said EM, accepting the call. It's me. Everything has been handled now. All of the spirits have moved to the fortress, and their houses have been constructed. They're getting used to life on the fortress. Nantian chuckled. Oh, that's good. How's the job applications doing? Shiro asked. We've already got quite a few farmers that are living on the farm spaces. I've connected a few portals with the merchants of the hidden sect, so that there is some trade between the two places. Plus, there are more jobs being filled now, so most of the spirits will be working. In a day or two, Nantian replied, Perfect. How's the military then? Well, we don't need many soldiers since we have powerful people. Having something similar to an elite task force is handy, Shiro asked. The military is split into two groups right now. First is something similar to a normal army. We have commanders and generals. The normal army has access to a decent amount of resources to get stronger, while the commanders and generals receive better care. The second group is, as you said, an elite task force. They've been suited up with some of the better weapons and armors from the sect. They're also getting some training from the teachers. The competition here is tough, since if they don't meet the minimum requirements, they will be demoted back to the normal army, and someone else will take their place. There are some additional benefits to being in the task force, and I can send you the information if you need. Mon, that's fine. Since the city is made by yours truly, I can get the information whenever I want. But thanks for looking after the place and making sure the move is done properly. We're about to get rid of the final candidates in the Demon Continent, so you can probably teleport the city to us, and I'll get the rest of the party settled down. Oh, also, leave one of the platforms for a main smithing island of sorts, and focus most of our best materials there. Make it so that only the best smiths can live there and can get precious metals to work with. We'll have them provide a monthly quota of armor and weapons, not including commissions, so that they can supply the whole place. Once we take care of the Demon Continent, We'll make portals connecting the two places after we solidify Madison's rule. The only problem is what comes after, as I might need to be a bit heavy-handed against the demons depending on what happens. The spirits are fine since they listen to me, but demons value strength. We need to deal with this thought process otherwise. They can't live in the city since they would stir up trouble. Shiro sighed. You can kill them if they step out of line. According to demon rule, if the weaker side revolts against the stronger side, killing the weakling is no problem. I know, Piri. Miss Shiro and Mistress have different values, but do not hesitate to kill the demons if they step out of line, since they do so, knowing the risks. Asphil said, as Shiro raised her eyebrow. Are you sure? If we cause a revolt, I might have to eliminate a large amount of demons. Shiro narrowed her eyes as Asphil swallowed her saliva in nervousness, since she knew Shiro wasn't joking. It's fine. Demons respect hierarchy a lot. So once Mistress becomes the only queen candidate, they'll follow her orders strictly. Asphil reassured as Shiro nodded her head. Very well then. I'll give them a trial period of a month after we sort everything out. If they can't follow laws, then they can't live here. Of course, the demons that can actually follow laws will be welcomed, Shiro smiled. Soon they arrived at what seemed to be a path that led to an underground ruin of sorts. Getting out of the car, Shiro recalled all of the drones to her side and disassembled them. Seems like the tracks end here. Shiro smiled as there was only one entrance to the location of the artifact. Perhaps we can corner them if we enter now, Hillian said as Shiro nodded. We could, but that would be no fun now. They're trying so hard to face us. Shiro chuckled and summoned Nimue, Izuel, and Estrella. Seeing Estrella with her eyes red around the corner, she realized that she must have been crying. Are you feeling better now? Shiro asked with a smile. I'm feeling better, your high... Estrella, remember what I said. Nimue smiled as Estrella paused. Struggling for a moment, Estrella sighed. I am feeling better, Shishiro. She squeezed out as Shiro nodded her head. That's good. Izuel, would Ati be okay in the Mana realm? Shiro asked, as she was tempted to bring him out since she could protect him. He's a smart boy, so he's fine. He'll be watching closely, though, since he's worried about you. Izuel chuckled. I'll have to spend some time with him later. For now, though, let's... Before Shiro could finish her sentence, a huge Tier 6 magic circle expanded out as Estrella immediately teleported everyone away from the danger zone. Well, aren't you a rude one? First time meeting face to face, and you actually greet us with such a rude greeting. Shiro narrowed her eyes as Gnostic floated in the air with the candidates behind him. I do apologize, but for someone like you, I need every chance of attack that I can get. Gnostic smiled. That is true. So can I presume that you have obtained the artifact that can seal me, I suppose? Shiro asked with a smile, as the candidates glared at Asphil, who wasn't afraid. Seems like Asphil has told you everything. Then I won't hide it. We have indeed obtained the artifact. For you to still come here knowing that, it would seem like you are not afraid of a black-ranked artifact. Gnostic sighed, since this meant that the chances of sealing her would be close to 0. It was black-ranked artifact, and yet Shiro didn't care. Will you be giving up then? Shiro asked, as Gnostic shook his head. Unfortunately, no. Gnostic smiled as he pulled out a talisman. Pushing it in the air in front of him, he flooded mana into the talisman, which released a blinding light. Once the light died down, Shiro noticed that she was in an isolated space with Gnostic. Ah, that was the artifact that Asphil mentioned, wasn't it? One that is used to isolate us so that you can fight us in a one-on-one situation, Shiro smiled, indeed. However, since you have more members than us, you do have the advantage in terms of power. Gnostic shook his head helplessly. True. Let's see. So, that's how you have spaced us out, huh? Interesting. Shiro smiled as she activated her analysis skill and saw who everyone was paired up with. You can even see them through the barriers. What can't you do? Gnostic asked, as having a chat with her is probably a better way to delay time compared to fighting. Honestly, not much. So then, from what I know, You're planning to use the sealing artifact to sacrifice yourself along with me, no? Shiro asked as Gnostic nodded his head. Indeed. That was the original plan, but I don't think it's going to work anymore. Though I must ask, what is your goal for your conquest? Gnostic asked, since that was never clear to him. Oh, this? It's just to help. A friend. You see, she is a candidate, and if a king was to ascend, she would become a mindless woman wanting to become the king's partner, and that is not what she wants. So I decided to give her a hand. Shiro smiled. I see. Seems like it's the truth. Gnostic smiled as he pulled out another artifact. This would have been set off if you had lied, but you're being truthful. I suppose I don't need to worry then. Gnostic chuckled. Oh? Shiro raised her eyebrow as she was rather curious as to what he had up his sleeve. Please give me the best fight of my life, as will probably be my last fight, Gnostic asked as Shiro nodded her head. Thank you. Flaring his aura, Gnostic flashed towards Shiro. Smiling slightly, Shiro took a step back as Gnostic appeared in front of her. A trail of grey steam escaped his hands, and she immediately noticed that it was corroding the mana that was near it. How? I probably shouldn't let that hit me. Shiro mused to herself as she summoned her sword and swung towards Gnostic. Narrowing his eyes, Gnostic stomped his foot down, and a hole was eroded beneath him. With his body suddenly dropping down, Shiro's sword missed its mark. Oh my. Shiro commented while summoning a second sword to her side. A Tier 6 magic circle expanded out beneath her as she enhanced both her swords with celestial path and stabbed down into the ground. Ping! Shattering the magic circle into pieces, Shiro flipped back as Gnostic tried to grab her ankles. Oh, pervert, you actually tried to look up my skirt. Shiro joked around and Gnostic could only shrug his shoulders. Would you believe me if I said it was a mere coincidence? Gnostic asked as he slammed his hands down. Suddenly a snake created entirely from the grey smoke appeared and lashed out towards her. Looking at the giant serpent, Shiro only chuckled and crouched down slightly. Cleaving up with her sword, she split it in two with ease. I suppose I would believe you if you say it was a mere coincidence, Shiro replied, as Gnostic arrived by her side, not giving her a chance to attack him, since he understood that if she landed an attack, he'd be heavily injured, twisting his body. He kicked towards her ribs, but Shiro guarded against the strike with the face of her sword and used her spare sword to act as a support and prevent her from being moved. Adapting to the situation immediately, Gnostic kicked off the blade and used it as a vault to jump into the air. Activating two quick spells, which didn't let Shiro have the time to cancel them, two streams of dark magic surged towards her. Pivoting on her foot, Shiro enhanced both her swords and slashed out in a circle. Cutting apart the magic, Shiro wanted to step forward, but just as she did this, Gnostic appeared behind her and activated a Tier 6 spell that he had been preparing for a while. There's no time to cancel it. Shiro thought to herself and activated her celestial mirage. Shifting her body to the side, Shiro watched as a thin beam of enemy suddenly cut through her illusion and corroded it away in an instant. Oh my, how dangerous. Shiro commented as Gnostic understood that it was an illusion since it corroded far too fast for someone of Shiro's strength. Without a moment's delay, he turned his body and slashed towards her using the beam of energy. Bending back, Shiro managed to dodge the strike and kick his wrist, which forced the blade to move up. Frowning slightly, Gnostic twirled the blade before stabbing himself in the chest with it. Grey smoke exploded out and wrapped around his body, which solidified into a set of armor. With a single gesture, the entire ground in the isolated space turned grey, and Shiro understood that it was a domain of sorts. Slamming her hand down, a layer of ice spread out but was corroded away. Seeing the corrosion on her hand, Shiro casually cut off the corroded parts and regenerated her flesh. Wrapping her boots in a layer of mana enhanced with celestial path, Shiro stood on the corrupted ground without any problems. Feeling a surge of mana originating from Gnostic, Shiro noticed tens of Tier 6 magic circles appearing all around her. Tier 6 destruction magic? Shiro immediately noticed what class of magic it was and created enough needles enhanced with celestial path. Sending them out, she was mildly surprised to see the mana begin to corrode, which in turn cancelled out her celestial path. Widening her eyes in surprise, Shiro immediately decided to use something that she had been testing. Eyes of Gorgon, plus analysis, plus celestial path. Petrifying the formation of the spell for a moment. Her analysis spotted the weak points and destroyed them with celestial path. However, it only worked on spells within her sight, so it didn't activate on the spells behind her. Ranov even. If she was to turn around now and try to use the skill, it wouldn't be able to halt it in time. Pushing her hand back, a wall of ice erupted out of the ground as Shiro made sure to construct it in a way so that it was as hard as possible. Surprisingly, nothing happened as Gnostic appeared in front of her and slammed his foot against her stomach, slamming her against the ice wall. He pulled his hand back and summoned a sword from his inventory before slashing towards her neck. How smart. Actually using that as a bait for me to shift my focus. Shiro grinned. Phasing through the ice, she appeared on the other side and slammed her palm against the surface. With a giant wall of ice slamming into him, Gnostic gritted his teeth and corroded it away in an instant. Taking a deep breath, he analyzed the battle so far and knew that Shiro was revealing just enough strength to cope with what he has to give so as to not end this quickly. Feeling a little thankful for granting his wish, Gnostic grabbed his sword and swung it towards Shiro. Releasing a blood-red blade of energy, he jumped back and pushed both his hands together. Ping! Hearing the energy shatter apart like glass, Gnostic was happy that it managed to buy him a little bit of time as mana surged towards him. Opening his palm, a blizzard of grey ash exploded out and rapidly approached Shiro's location. Seeing this, Shiro narrowed her eyes. The easy way out would be to use her rift, since that can just dodge it with ease. However, since this was Gnostic's final fight, she'd entertain him a little. Activating her own Tier 5 magic circle, a torrent of snow erupted out and contested against the ash. While this was happening, Shiro flexed her fingers and ice chains lashed towards Gnostic. Frozen slumber. Quickly jumping back to avoid being frozen by the chains, grabbing them with his hands. He disintegrated them to ash as the individual particles morphed into needles and shot towards Shiro. Widening her eyes, Shiro immediately summoned a second blizzard as the needles were blown away. Quickly raising her sword behind her, she parried Gnostic's strike before aiming her spare hand at his chest. Bang! Poochie! Sending out an ice spear, it pierced through his armor and chest. Slamming against the walls of the isolated space, Gnostic coughed up a mouthful of blood before forcing himself to stand back up. Is this everything you've got? Shiro asked as Gnostic only smiled and shook his head. Not yet. But if I use everything and end the fight quickly with you being disappointed, it would be quite sad. Gnostic replied as his wounds quickly stitched itself together. Activating another self-buff skill, a demonic aura erupted from his body as he abandoned all forms of defense. Appearing in front of Shiro in an instant, he reached towards her neck. Parrying it with her sword, Shiro was surprised that it disintegrated to ash so quickly and wanted to make some space. But just as she moved back, she felt a spark of pain in her hand, and it shattered apart into blood and ash. As the corrosion traveled up her arm, Shiro didn't hesitate to cut off her arm from the shoulder down. Life fire wrapped around her shoulder as she quickly regenerated her arm. While this was happening, Gnostic continued to launch a barrage of attacks towards Shiro. Understanding that each hit would corrode her, Shiro focused her mind on dodging each strike. Like a leaf in the wind, Gnostic was just a little too slow and wasn't able to catch her at all. Each time his attack seemed to land, she would always get away just in time. While it was frustrating, Gnostic was enjoying himself since he was improving during the fight. Eliminate the lag between each hit, don't waste time. She's fast, faster than me. I can't be wasting time with dull movements. Become efficient. He then thought to himself as he continued to push his body to the limit. Naturally, Shiro noticed this as she could tell that his control was improving over time. Once her arm regenerated, Shiro narrowed her eyes. I should attack now, shouldn't I? She smiled before summoning another sword. Activating her boundary, time seemed to stop as Gnostic's weaknesses appeared in her sight. Flickering past him, Gnostic was confused for a moment when he felt nothing, but the pain was merely delayed as his cuts opened up all over his body. With his tendons cut, he couldn't help but collapse on the floor as his wounds were trying their best to heal, but it was taking a little too long. So the gap was this big, huh? He thought with a smile, but this didn't mean he was giving up. Activating all of his berserk skills at once without care of the backlash, a cruel aura wrapped around him as his wounds were forcefully healed. Seeing this, Shiro was reminded about what had happened when she was facing up against the Gorgon. In a moment of desperation, she had stacked all of the berserk skills together without care for the consequences. Naturally, the result of such was almost dying, if not for the help of her friends. Tilting her head, Shiro narrowly dodged his strike as she flicked her hand and immediately cut off his arm that tried to strike her. Gritting his teeth, he quickly regenerated his entire arm and tried to roundhouse kick her head, catching his kick. Shiro didn't care that her hand was corroding away and slammed him against the ground. Once again, Shiro cut off the part of her arm that was being corroded. Just as she finished regenerating, Gnostic had also recovered from the slam. Grey smoke, entrails shot towards her in an attempt to kill her. Swiping up with her hand, dark flames erupted out of the ground and devoured the smoke in an instant. Dying to the backlash would be pretty disappointing, so I'll have a final contest of power with you. Shiro narrowed her eyes and smiled. Activating her true spirit nature and divine raiment, a black dress wrapped around her body as she chose, the lightning element. Her white hair started to glow with a yellow color as Shiro brought out Sylvanis, her most treasured weapon. On its own, the blade already ignored 80% of all forms of armor and effect. 4 allows the element to double its effectiveness, while ignoring all of the target's resistance towards that element. In essence, he wouldn't be able to reduce the power of her strike at all. Crouching down slightly, Shiro flashed toward like a streak of lightning. Gritting his teeth, Gnostic forcefully activated a wide-range Tier 6 spell as a wave of corrosive ash exploded toward Shiro. Twisting her body, she cut through the smoke easily as the force of her strikes were able to part them aside so that it didn't affect her. Plus, her blade was unbreakable, so the corrosion couldn't do anything about the sword. Time seemed to stop for Gnostic as he watched the lightning-infused Shiro come closer with each passing moment. Her sword flickered with lightning as he knew that his life was coming to a close. Despite using everything I have, she can still deal with me using just skills and techniques. She hasn't used a single berserk skill. Gnostic thought with a small smile. Gathering all of his mana in a final destructive hit, he punched towards Shiro as she activated Boundary. A web of slashes exploded out as Gnostic was cut apart in a single moment as the lightning charred the rest of his body and prevented him from regenerating. However, during the last moment, he managed to unleash the attack at the perfect moment. Looking down at her body, Shiro couldn't help her praise him in her mind. After all, his last attack had managed to obliterate her entire arm and a large chunk of her torso. She could already feel light-headed from the loss of blood as she quickly removed all of the corroded parts and regenerated everything using grace rather than life fire, since life fire would take a little longer to heal a wound of this scale. With Gnostic killed, her level had increased a little as she collected his body. Surprisingly, he had quite a lot of weapons, armors, materials, and items. Most of the items weren't useful for her, but she managed to find the artifact that they were planning to use. Prison of Souls, Black. Using your own soul as a catalyst, you are able to seal away a being more powerful than you. However, if the strength disparity between the two of you is too big, the strength of the seal will be weakened. This cannot be dodged and is a guaranteed hit. Once they are sealed, their physical body will be restrained, unable to move or do anything while their soul will be trapped in this artifact. Even if they destroy the seal on the body, unless they destroy the seal on the soul, the person will not be able to control their physical body. Uses 1-4 reading the item description, Shiro was a little surprised to see that it was a guaranteed hit that used souls as the catalyst. If Gnostic had wanted to use this in the fight, it would definitely be a little annoying since it was a guaranteed hit. That demon's pretty honorable. Shiro thought to herself, since he wanted his last fight to be one where he could let loose, and not one where he would just seal her away. And up storing the artifact away, so that she could analyze it at a later date. Shiro wondered how she was meant to move around the isolated space. She could see that the others were performing quite nicely as they were pushing the candidates back. Even rank 2 and 3, who they had limited information on, were being pushed back thanks to the party's synergy and teamwork. Right after she killed Gnostic, Wislia, the one who had a certain amount of control over the artifact that isolated them, frowned as she noticed that she now had full control. This could only mean one thing, and that Gnostic is dead. But she could still sense Shiro's, and a signal, so she could assume that Gnostic probably didn't use the artifact. This is bad, she thought to herself while jumping back. However, Estrella, Arim, and Lysandra weren't about to give her more room. Creating a portal behind her, Wislia found herself being teleported closer to the trio as her movements were dulled by Arim. With her guard being open, Lysandra charged towards her as her sword lit up with a golden flame that caused her to flinch. Splitting her body in two, Wislia created 2 clones of herself and dodged her strike before fusing together. Slamming her hand down, Tier 5 magic circles appeared around the trio. From their shadow, tens of hands shot out and restrained their movements while Wislia pressed her palm against the walls of the isolated space. Yo, seems like you can control this place, huh? Good for you. Shiro smiled as she appeared next to Wislia with the help of the rift. Normally this wouldn't work, but after her recent creation of a pseudo-teleport shrine, her understanding had increased, and through using Celestial Path, she was able to create pathways to each of the rooms that they had isolated. However, I think I'll have you stay here so that you can't regroup, Shiro smiled as she flexed her finger. Suddenly, a Tier 6 magic circle expanded out as a thin barrier overlaid the walls, preventing Wislia from using the artifact at all. However, Wislia only smiled. You might have prevented me from using the artifact, but I can still cut off my supply mana. Just as she said this, the isolated space started to shake before crumbling apart. Saresha! Use the forest! Wislia shouted out as she flickered away, regrouping with the rest of the candidates. Looking at the state of the party members, Shiro knew that they would have won their fights eventually. Most of the candidates were looking worn out, while a few looked as though they were on the verge of death. Plans have changed. She's got the artifact, and Gnostic is dead, Wislia said as the candidates furrowed their brows. Without saying anything else, they immediately dashed towards the forest as the party chased them down. Naturally, Shiro decided to spectate from the side, as her job was now over. Just as they entered the forest, Saresha blew her flute as the mana intensity started to increase. The trees started to uproot themselves as vines shot towards the party. Oh my, using trees when Izuel is around is just a poor choice of actions. Shiro smiled as Izuel didn't hesitate to dash forward. Biting her finger, she used her blood to draw a Tier 5 magic circle in the air before slamming it in the ground. A pulse of energy expanded through the forest as the trees immediately turned against the candidates. What? Widening her eyes in shock, Saresha tried to blow her flute once more, but it seemed to have lost its effectiveness. With the forest now on the party's side, the rest of the fight could only be described as a hunt. Soon, the only candidate left. Here was Madison, as Asphil gave up her role. Just as this happened, the entire party received a notification. You have assisted candidate ranked 72, Madison, to become the only remaining candidate. She shall begin her evolution to become the demon. Queen! Looking at the notification, the party looked at one another in shock, and Shiro was no exception. To her understanding, even if Madison was the only one left, there should have been another test, but the system immediately handed her the role. While it does make sense, it does overwrite what they knew. However, even if they were confused, the system didn't pause for them as a magic circle of unknown tier opened up beneath Madison. Before she could even call out for help, a crystal wrapped around her body and she was sent into a deep slumber. Widening his eyes, Helion was about to try to smash the crystal when Shiro grabbed his wrist. Stop it. That crystal is what is used when we evolve. Shattering it could bring some negative effects. Plus, the system said that she's evolving into the queen, so it's beneficial for her, Shiro said as Hylian calmed down. Regardless, this is a rather abnormal situation. Did you get a notification as well? Shiro asked Asphil since she was the only other demon here. I did. Asphil nodded as she took a deep breath. The Queen of Demons has been selected, is what my notification said. Hearing what she had said, the party understood that the entire demon race probably got this notification. For now, let's take her to a safe location. I'm not sure how long it'll take for her to finish her evolution, but leaving her out in the open is a no-go. Since Nantian has finished helping the spirits move, I'll summon Asharia to our location. We can also make some preparations in moving the demons to the city, Shiro said, as she created a small nanotech disc and threw it into the air. Yo Nantian, I've set up a marker. You should be able to send Asharia to my current location, Shiro said while activating the earpiece. As the disc was flying higher into the air, it started to unpack itself as several layers of Tier 5 magic circles appeared. Yep, I can see the marker now. I've already sent out an announcement saying that we'll be teleporting in 5 seconds to the spirits are bracing themselves. This is the first teleport, so I'm not sure about the feedback. Hopefully it should be all right. Nantian chuckled as Shiro laughed. Who do you think built that thing? You. That's why I'm worried. With the way you like to make your jets, I can't help but worry for the rest of us, Nantian replied, as Shiro stayed silent. He wasn't wrong. When making the fortress, she was a little tempted to make things bumpy and just brush it off as something she couldn't fix. But in the end, against her better judgment, she decided to make things stable. Che, just trust me, the feedback should be minimal. If anything, you probably wouldn't even notice it, except for the sudden shift in sky, since the one in the demon world is red. Shiro clicked her tongue. Of course, we're sending Asharia over now. Cutting off the link, Shiro watched as the magic circle started to shimmer with a soft blue light. Continuing its expanse, Asphil watched in shock as this magic circle was bigger than anything that she had ever seen before. Plus, it wasn't just one magic circle either. It was several. The amount of mana needed to power all of this must be crazy. Not to mention the fact that she had just finished a fight with the Tier 6 Gnostic. The amount of mana she had used already far surpassed what she had initially expected. But the rest of the party actually acted as though this was perfectly normal. There was only one sentence in Asphil's mind right now. What in the actual fuck is wrong with this party? They were completely abnormal. Even the healer could outdamage a candidate, and even buff the rest of the party, never mind the rest. She was grateful that she could serve the Queen of Demons, but she felt as though her sense of what is normal and what is not will soon change. Though, if they were normal, they wouldn't be able to kill the rest of the candidates, so it was to be expected. Waiting for a little longer, the party felt a surge in mana before it was quiet. Looking around in confusion, they couldn't find Asharia, nor could they find any hints of where it might be. NOB. Looking at Shiro, they were about to ask her about the fortress when she only smiled and snapped her finger. Seeing the skies flicker, the party looked up and saw the city slowly reveal itself in the air. Biffed! Holy crap! Hylian cried out in shock, seeing the sheer size of the city and the amount of metal involved. You're just seeing the underside of the city, and you're already shocked, haha. Come, I'll show you the top. Shiro grinned. Flexing her fingers, she teleported everyone above the city so that they could get a full view of the place. Looking at the sheer scale of the city with spirits walking around, drones making sure no one was making any trouble, people working in farmlands and so on, the party was speechless at the fact that Shiro made all of this. Last time, she made a small-scale fortress to demonstrate her power, but looking at the sheer size of this one, they wouldn't be surprised if she said that this could destroy a country. After all, it was a few times bigger than a city. Little did they know, this wasn't even its full size either. Shiro had to shrink it down a little since there was too much empty space, and with the amount of spirits migrating over, it would be difficult to make this place look lively if she had kept the amount of space. Welcome to Asharia. This is where our headquarters will be for the new age. Once Madison wakes up, we'll have her announce her position as the queen, and move a few demons to the city so that the spirits and demons can get used to one another. After all, they'll be neighbors in the new age. I can't let Madison stay in the demon continent, especially when more powerful queens are roaming around. Plus, elves might be joining as well. Shiro smiled towards Azilia and Lyrica, since Lyrica's half-sister is the current leader in training. Moving the 3 races into the city would make things lively. With her being able to expand the fortress at will, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a country if the 3 races start to live on Asheria. Teleporting everyone to the main tower, Shiro had a few drones prepare a room for the party, as well as a place for Madison, since she was evolving into the Demon Queen right now. Arriving. In the command room, Shiro saw Nantien sitting on a chair with his legs crossed. He had already removed his mask and was waiting for Shiro. Seems like you had some fun in the Demon Continent. Nantien smiled as Shiro nodded her head, and you seem to have enjoyed your time here acting as captain. Shiro chuckled while making a chair for herself. A little. I've been spending most of my time here after all. Having a console that can monitor the entire fortress took a bit to get used to, but once you get past the learning curve, it's actually very efficient, Nantien said while tapping the screen. Of course, I made it after all. I can't have one of my best creations be inefficient now, can I? Also, I should have left a document for mech pilot training. There will be people who aren't good at fighting in person, so using mechs would be helpful for them as their presence on the battlefield can't be ignored. Plus, since they're the mechs that I made, you can expect them to be the best of the best. Shiro smiled. With our technology right now, we can't even make guns effective on the monsters, never mind the mechs. Your mechs are the best of the best because they are the only ones around, haha. Though even if we did start making mechs, your knowledge is years ahead of even the smartest people around, so it would be almost impossible to make mechs better than the ones you have. Nantien shrugged as Shiro nodded her head with a smile. If he had said hundreds of years ahead, she would have punched him, since it made her sound like a granny. Activating the camouflage on the city, Shiro helped organize a few things manually while they waited for Madison to wake up.